1969 wasn't just another year in music history, it was the year everything changed. While humanity took its first steps on the moon, musicians were taking equally giant leaps that would reshape rock forever. The Beatles' final rooftop concert, Bowie's Space Oddity coinciding with the moon landing, Woodstock bringing 500,000 together, 1969 was when rock stopped being just entertainment and became revolution. Today, we're exploring 10 songs from this legendary year that didn't just climb the charts, they changed the world forever. So buckle up, because we're about to dive into the year that gave birth to modern rock as we know it. Number 10, Come Together by the Beatles. We start with a song that almost didn't happen. The song is the opening track on the band's 1969 studio album Abbey Road. It was also a double A-side in the United Kingdom with Something, reaching number 4 in the UK charts as well as number 1 in the Billboard Hot 100. But here's the fascinating backstory. In early 1969, John Lennon and his wife, Yoko Ono, held non-violent protests against the Vietnam War dubbed the Bed-Ins for peace. In May, during the Montreal portion of the Bed-In, counterculture figures from across North America visited Lennon. Among the visitors was the American psychologist Timothy Leary, an early advocate of LSD whom Lennon admired. Leary intended to run for governor of California in the following year's election, and he asked Lennon to write him a campaign song based on the campaign's slogan, "Come Together, Join the Party." The resulting chant was only a line long, "Come together and join the party." What started as a political jingle became something far more powerful. The recording of Come Together, one of John Lennon's main contributions to the Abbey Road album, commenced on this day. The backing track was recorded in 8 takes in Studio 3, in a session lasting from 2:30 to 9:30 p.m. The song's impact was immediate and lasting. It perfectly captured the spirit of unity and rebellion that defined the late 1960s. But with a musical sophistication that pointed toward the future. The way Lennon's vocals floated over McCartney's hypnotic bass line created a template that countless bands would follow. Number 9, Whole Lotta Love by Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin first performed Whole Lotta Love on 26th of April 1969. But when they recorded it, they had no idea they were creating what would become Whole Lotta Love is a song by the English rock band Led Zeppelin. It is the opening track on the band's second album, Led Zeppelin II, and was released as a single in 1969 in several countries. As with other Led Zeppelin songs, no single was released in the United Kingdom. In the United States, it became their first hit and was certified gold. The song's creation was a masterclass in spontaneous genius. Jimmy Page initially came up with the classic Whole Lotta Love riff at his Pangbourne home in the late summer of 1968. Some 9 months later, in April 1969, it was this song that kick-started the sessions for Led Zeppelin II at Olympic Studios in Barnes. But the recording process was where the real magic happened. Page and Kramer spent 2 days mixing the album at A&R Studios, and the album's production was entirely credited to Jimmy Page, with Eddie Kramer engineering. Kramer was quoted as saying, "The famous Whole Lotta Love mix, where everything is going bananas, is a combination of Jimmy and myself just flying around on a small console twiddling every knob known to man." The song's impact on heavy metal and hard rock cannot be overstated. In 2004, the song was ranked number 75 on Rolling Stone magazine's list of the 500 greatest songs of all time, and in March 2005, Q placed Whole Lotta Love at number 3 in its list of the 100 greatest guitar tracks. It was placed 11th on a similar list by Rolling Stone. In 2009, it was named the 3rd greatest hard rock song of all time by VH1. What made this song world-changing wasn't just its power, it was how it redefined what rock music could be. The psychedelic middle section, the thunderous drums, and that iconic riff created a blueprint for heavy music that's still being followed today. Number 8, Space Oddity by David Bowie. July 11th, 1969. Space Oddity is a song by the English singer-songwriter David Bowie. It was first released on 11 July 1969 by Philips and Mercury Records as a 7-inch single, then as the opening track of his second studio album, David Bowie. 5 days later, humanity would land on the moon, but but Bowie had already sent his fictional astronaut Major Tom into space, and the timing couldn't have been more perfect. Here's what's incredible. Many listeners assume that Space Oddity was riffing on the Apollo 11 moon landing of 1969, but it was actually inspired by a Stanley Kubrick film released a year earlier. Bowie watched 2001: A Space Odyssey multiple times when it premiered in theaters in 1968. The song's success was almost accidental. The label Rush released the single to capitalize on the Apollo 11 moon mission, which was launched 5 days later. According to Bowie, it was picked up by British television and used as the background music for the landing itself in Britain, though I'm sure they really weren't listening to the lyric at all. It wasn't a pleasant thing to juxtapose against a moon landing. What made Space Oddity revolutionary wasn't just its space-age theme, it was how Bowie created an entirely new kind of storytelling in rock music. Major Tom, the fictional astronaut at the center of Space Oddity, is one of the most iconic characters invented for a pop song. It took a decade for him to resurface in David Bowie's discography. In his 1980 single Ashes to Ashes, the artist presents a different version of the character. This song didn't just launch Major Tom into space, it launched Bowie's career and created a template for conceptual theatrical rock that would influence everyone from Queen to Radiohead. Number 7. Proud Mary by Creedence Clearwater Revival. Proud Mary is a song by American rock band Creedence Clearwater Revival, written by vocalist and lead guitarist John Fogerty. It was released as a single in January 1969 by Fantasy Records and on the band's second studio album Bayou Country. The song became a major hit in the United States, peaking at number 1, 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 in March 1969. The first of 5 singles to peak at number 2 for the group. But here's the story behind the song that makes it so special. Proud Mary was penned by the band's principal songsmith, frontman John Fogerty. Written shortly after he was discharged from the National Guard, Fogerty remembers the 1969 tune as his first truly great work. Fogerty himself described the moment of creation. After the Army service, John Fogerty bought a little empty notebook at his local drugstore. The very first title he wrote in it was Proud Mary. He had no idea what that title meant. At the time, he thought maybe it was a domestic maid who worked for some rich people, and she's wearing a little white uniform. The breakthrough came when he got his discharge papers. Fogerty was still in the Army Reserve when, in mid-July 1968, he received his honorable discharge from the United States Army. After reading the letter, he went onto a little patch of grass in front of the apartment house and did a couple of cartwheels. He then went right in the house and came up with the first line, "Left a good job in the city." He wrote the rest of Proud Mary within the following week and a half. What made Proud Mary world-changing was how it perfectly captured the American spirit of freedom and movement. By the March 8th chart, Proud Mary was up to number 2, but it stayed there for 3 weeks, unable to unseat first Sly and the Family Stone's Everyday People, and then Tommy Roe's Dizzy from the top spot. The song became one of the band's most famous live songs, being played at almost every Who concert since its debut live performance on 2 May 1969. More than just a hit song, Proud Mary became a cultural phenomenon. Its most famous cover by Ike and Tina Turner proved the song's versatility and power, showing how great songs transcend their original genre. Number 6. Pinball Wizard by The Who. In February 1969, The Who were putting the finishing touches on their ambitious double album, Tommy. But then, music critic Nick Cohn heard it and gave it only a lukewarm review. Pete Townshend recounted the truth behind the story of how Pinball Wizard came to be part of The Who's 1969 rock opera Tommy, forcing him to make the deaf, dumb, and blind lead character into an arcade game champion. In late 1968 or early 1969, when The Who played a rough assembly of their new album to critic Nick Cohn, Cohn gave a lukewarm reaction to it. That's when Townshend made a crucial decision. Knowing Cohn was an avid pinball fan, Townshend suggested that Tommy would play pinball, and Cohn immediately declared Tommy to be a masterpiece. The song Pinball Wizard was written and recorded almost immediately. Pinball Wizard, written by Pete Townshend, produced by Kit Lambert. Recorded at IBC Studios, London, February 12, 1969. The song became Pinball Wizard is a song by the English rock band The Who, written by guitarist and primary songwriter Pete Townshend, and featured on their 1969 rock opera album Tommy. The original recording was released as a single in 1969 and reached number 4 in the UK charts and number 19 on the US Billboard Hot 100. What made Pinball Wizard revolutionary was how it proved rock could tell complex stories. Tommy is the fourth studio album by the English rock band The Who, released on May 17, 1969. Written primarily by guitarist Pete Townshend, Tommy is a double album and an early rock opera that tells the story of the fictional Tommy Walker and his path to becoming a spiritual leader and messianic figure. This wasn't just a song, it was part of the first successful rock opera, proving that rock music could be as sophisticated and narrative-driven as any classical composition. The impact rippled through the entire music industry, inspiring concept albums from Pink Floyd, Genesis, and countless others. Number 5. In the Court of the Crimson King by King Crimson.
For the court of the crimson.
October 10th, 1969. A band most people had never heard of released an album that would change everything. In the Court of the Crimson King, subtitled An Observation by King Crimson, is the debut studio album by English progressive rock band King Crimson, released on October 10, 1969 by Island Records. Often regarded as the first true progressive rock album, it combined rock music influences with elements of jazz, classical, and symphonic music. The impact was immediate and profound. The debut album, In the Court of the Crimson King, was released in October 1969 on Island Records. Fripp would later describe it as having been an instant smash, and New York's acid album of 1970, notwithstanding Fripp and Giles's assertion that the band never used psychedelic drugs. The Who guitarist and composer Pete Townshend called the album an uncanny masterpiece. What made this album so revolutionary? The music on In the Court of the Crimson King is considered by critics to be stylistically diverse and rhythmically complex. John Cunningham of What Culture said the album threw the bluesy sound of rock at the time out the window. The critical consensus is clear. In his 1997 book, Rocking the Classics, critic and musicologist Edward McCann notes that In the Court of the Crimson King may be the most influential progressive rock album ever released. McCann went on to argue that In the Court of the Crimson King presented an example of every significant element of a mature progressive rock genre. Paul Stump's History of Progressive Rock, published the same year, stated that if progressive rock as a discrete genre can be said to have had a starting point, In the Court of the Crimson King is probably it. This album didn't just influence rock, it created an entirely new genre. Progressive rock became one of the most important movements in music history, spawning bands like Yes, Genesis, Pink Floyd's later work, and inspiring musicians for decades to come. Number 4. I Want You, She's So Heavy by the Beatles. The Beatles were known for their pop perfection, but in 1969 they created something completely different. Hidden on side 1 of Abbey Road was a nearly 8-minute monster that showed rock's darker possibilities. The finished song is a combination of 2 different recording attempts. The first attempt occurred in February 1969, almost immediately after the Get Back Let It Be sessions with Billy Preston. This was subsequently combined with a second version made during the Abbey Road sessions proper in April. The 2 sections together ran to nearly 8 minutes, making it the Beatles' second longest released track. What made this song so revolutionary was its sheer intensity and length. The Beatles, masters of the 3-minute pop song, created something that was almost proto-metal. Lennon used Harrison's Moog synthesizer with a white noise setting to create a wind effect that was overdubbed on the second half of the track. During the final edit, Lennon told Emmerich to cut it right there at 7 minutes and 44 seconds, creating a sudden jarring silence that concludes the first side of Abbey Road. This song proved that the Beatles weren't just pop masters. They were musical visionaries willing to push rock into uncharted territory. Its influence can be heard in everything from Black Sabbath to modern doom metal. Number 3. The Rolling Stones' Dark Turn. While many bands were exploring peace and love, the Rolling Stones went darker. 1969 saw them release material that would define their outlaw image forever. Their controversial edge and raw energy during this period influenced the entire hard rock movement that would dominate the 1970s. The Stones' 1969 work showed that rock could be dangerous, rebellious, and uncompromising. This wasn't music for the flower power generation. This was music for rebels and outlaws. Their influence on hard rock, punk, and alternative music cannot be overstated. Number 2. The Woodstock Revolution. August 1969 brought us Woodstock, and with it, performances that would echo through eternity. CCR continued to tour constantly with performances in July 1969 at the Atlanta Pop Festival and in August 1969 at the Woodstock Festival. At Woodstock, the band took the stage in the early morning, hours after their scheduled start time. Woodstock proved that rock music had become more than entertainment. It was a cultural force capable of bringing 500,000 people together for 3 days of peace and music. The performances at Woodstock, from Hendrix's Star-Spangled Banner to The Who's Tommy, showed the world that rock had become the voice of a generation. Number 1, the birth of heavy metal. But the most world-changing moment of 1969 might have been the birth of heavy metal itself. Between Led Zeppelin's thunderous power, Black Sabbath's first recordings, and the heavier elements emerging from bands like King Crimson and even the Beatles, 1969 was the year rock discovered it could be truly heavy. This wasn't just louder music, it was fundamentally different music. The emphasis on power, darkness, and intensity would spawn entire subgenres and influence musicians for generations. From Metallica to Tool, from black metal to doom, the seeds were all planted in 1969. These 10 songs from 1969 didn't just change music, they changed culture. They proved rock could be progressive, theatrical, heavy, and revolutionary. From the Beatles' experimental ambition to Led Zeppelin's power, from Bowie's theatrical vision to King Crimson's complexity, 1969 was the year rock music grew up and showed the world what it could become. The influence continues today. Every concept album, every heavy riff, every boundary-pushing artist follows the path these songs laid down in 1969. They didn't just soundtrack history, they made it. What's your favorite track from this legendary year? Let us know in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe for more deep dives into the music that changed everything. Until next time, keep rocking.